The moment she stepped into the bar, Isla swore she'd only stay long enough to be seen. Her ex was here. She could feel it like pressure behind her eyes, the way you know a storm is coming before it breaks. He always found a way to be close without touching her. Close enough to watch. Close enough to remind her what he still controlled. Tonight, Isla had a plan. Not revenge, not exactly. Just something simple. Something that could punch a crack in his perfect little ego. A dance. She slipped off her coat, her beige dress catching the glow of chandelier light. Her heels clicked softly over polished wood as she crossed the room, heart steady, eyes sharp. A man was watching her already, but not the one she came to provoke. This one stood by the edge of the dance floor. Dark suit, shirt unbuttoned just enough to expose a gold chain. Tattoos like stories inked across his skin. He looked dangerous, but the quiet kind. The kind who didn't need to raise his voice to be feared. And he was beautiful. He offered his hand without a word. Just one dance, Isla said, half a smile on her lips. My ex is watching. What she didn't know, what no one in that golden-lit room could have guessed, was that this wasn't a random stranger. It was Dominic Moretti, Matteo's younger brother, the one they whispered about. The one who'd disappeared 5 years ago and reemerged with blood on his hands and a crown no one dared challenge. Isla didn't know the man she chose to dance with was the new mafia boss. And Dominic didn't plan to let her go again. What began as a performance to provoke an ex would become a spiral of secrets, power, and fire. Because in 3 days, the man she once escaped will find out she's back. And this time, she won't be the one running. Let me take you back to the last time Isla believed freedom meant distance. Before she realized it would take something darker to stay alive. Before one dance turned into a war. Hi, my amazing friends and family. Welcome back to another story for today. If you are ready to enjoy this heartwarming story, smash the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. I love seeing all your names and places. Also, don't forget to check out more of our interesting videos on the channel. And guess what? Tomorrow, I have got an even more exciting story to share with you that I know you'll love. Now back to the story. The moment their hands touched, something shifted in the room. It wasn't the chandeliers or the music or even the breathless way the crowd moved around them. It was him. The man with tattoos crawling up his neck like smoke and eyes darker than the wine in Isla's glass. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply extended his hand, and Isla, fueled by stubborn pride and one too many memories, gave him hers. Just one dance, she said again, but this time softer. A dare wrapped in silk. Her ex was still watching. From the bar. From the corner of her life she never fully escaped. She let this stranger pull her in. And that's when she knew. This wasn't just a dance. His hand found the small of her back with alarming ease. Her body molded against his, and her breath hitched. Not from nerves, but recognition. Her instincts twitched, coiled tight like something was wrong. But also right. The music drifted around them. Velvet strings and slow jazz. They began to move. Step, glide, turn. His lead was effortless. Too confident. Too precise. This man wasn't just some bored guest. He was trained in the art of control. I don't usually do this, Isla whispered, her eyes half on him, half on her ex in the distance. He didn't blink. Yes, you do. Her brows pinched. Excuse me? You pretend it's new, but it's not. This. His lips curved, not into a smile but something far more dangerous. You've danced before. Isla blinked. He spun her gently. Her dress flared. His fingers didn't just guide her. They possessed her. The room spun for a moment, but his voice kept her steady. You're good at running, he said, leaning close. But not tonight. The air slipped out of her lungs. Isla stopped moving, just for a heartbeat. Her eyes lifted to meet his, sharp now. Awake. Who are you? That's when she noticed it. The tattoo crawling along his collarbone. The gold chain brushing the edge of an open white shirt. His scent. Dark cologne and something colder beneath it, like steel after rain. Her fingers began to tremble in his hand. He just kept dancing. Behind them, her ex sipped from a glass, jaw tight, watching with the eyes of a man who hated to lose. The ice in his drink cracked under pressure. So did the look on his face. Good. Let him burn, Isla thought. Let him think she belonged to someone else now. But this stranger, he didn't feel like someone new. He felt like memory and shadow. You have the look of a ghost, she whispered. He chuckled low in his throat. Do I haunt you? Her gaze narrowed. Maybe. You haunted me first. Isla flinched. The chandelier lights flickered gold across his face, and for the first time, she saw it clearly. The shape of his jaw. The way his mouth curved when he was hiding something. The tattoo behind his ear. Her pulse spiked. Her skin went cold. Couldn't be. But it was. Dominic? She said, almost too quiet to hear. His grip around her waist tightened just enough to confirm it. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Dominic Moretti. The name she hadn't spoken in 5 years. The man everyone thought had vanished. Matteo's younger brother. The one who never played by the family's rules because he was too busy rewriting them in blood. Now he was here, holding her, smirking like he already knew how this night would end. Her whole body tensed. She tried to step back, but his fingers laced into hers, holding tight. Not hurting, just not letting go. You shouldn't be here, she breathed. You are. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know it was you. I know. Her eyes darted to the bar. Matteo was no longer seated. Panic crawled up her spine like a spider. Where did he go? Dominic didn't look. He's not the one you should be worried about. Her head whipped toward him. What do you mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled her into another slow turn, so graceful it made her dizzy. The music was still playing, but it felt muffled now. The walls of the room seemed to curve inward, trapping her inside a golden cage. Why are you here? She whispered. I could ask you the same. I didn't know you'd be, but I did. Her mouth dried. You planned this. He tilted his head slightly. Not the dance, but I knew you'd show up eventually. You're predictable when you're pretending not to be scared. I'm not scared. Then why are your hands shaking? She snatched her hand away. This was a mistake. He stepped closer. The only mistake was letting you walk away the first time. Her heart slammed in her chest. She didn't look back as she pulled away. Didn't want to see who was watching now. Whether it was Dominic, Matteo, or someone else entirely. But before she could disappear into the crowd, his voice chased after her. I'll be seeing you again, Isla. She didn't reply, didn't turn around, didn't breathe until she was outside the ballroom, heels clicking down a quiet corridor. She pressed her back to the wall and slid down, breath shallow. Dominic. The name tasted like rust in her mouth. He had been dangerous before, but now he wasn't just a Moretti. He was the Moretti, and she just danced with him like it meant nothing. But it did. God help her. It did. The night air outside the ballroom was cold enough to sting. Isla pressed her back against the marble wall and tried to catch her breath. Her pulse still raced like she had been running for miles. But she wasn't running. Not yet. Her palms were shaking, her heart pounding against her ribs, her mind screaming the same name over and over. Dominic Moretti. She could still feel his hand on her back. The heat of it. The weight of it. The way his voice sounded when he said her name, soft but sharp enough to cut through everything she thought she knew about tonight. The air smelled of perfume, rain, and trouble. She looked around the hallway, expecting him to appear again, but there was no sign of him. No footsteps, no shadow, only the faint echo of music from inside the ballroom, soft and slow like the ghost of their dance. Her stomach twisted. She told herself it couldn't be him, that she must have imagined it, that the man on that dance floor was just a look-alike with the same eyes, the same tattoos, the same way of breathing like the world belonged to him. But deep down she knew. Dominic was alive, and he had found her. Inside the ballroom, Dominic stood near the edge of the dance floor, half hidden by a tall column. The light from the chandeliers washed over his face, catching on the gold chain at his throat. He wasn't watching the dancers. He was watching her. Isla Hart, the woman who disappeared 5 years ago without a trace. The woman his brother used to call a possession. The woman Dominic once promised himself he would never touch. And here she was in his arms again. He had felt her pulse against his fingers, heard the tremor in her voice when she recognized him. He had waited years for that moment, but it didn't feel like victory. Felt like something far more dangerous. He didn't like that. "Boss?" A voice murmured from behind him. Dominic didn't turn. He knew who it was. Marco, his second in command. Always too loud, too loyal, too curious. "Do you want me to follow her?" Marco asked, low and careful. Dominic's jaw tightened. His gaze never left the door Isla had just disappeared through. "No," he said at last. "Not yet." Marco hesitated. "She's not supposed to be here." "Matteo." "I know," Dominic interrupted. His tone didn't rise. It didn't have to. It was the kind of calm that made men nervous. He finally turned, his expression smooth again, almost bored. But his eyes said something else entirely. "Make sure she gets home safe," he said quietly. "And don't be seen." Marco nodded once. "Understood." Dominic walked away. Outside, Isla's heels clicked against the pavement as she made her way down the hotel steps. The night had grown colder. The wind lifted strands of her dark hair, brushing them across her face. She tried to steady her breathing, but her chest still felt too tight. She shouldn't have come tonight. It was supposed to be harmless, a charity gala, a chance to prove she could exist in the same city as Matteo without flinching. But now everything had changed. She didn't even know if Matteo had been there at all. That thought made her shiver harder. She stopped at the curb and raised her hand for a cab. Nothing came. The street was too quiet, too empty. Her instincts whispered again. Someone was watching her. She turned her head, scanning the shadows near the hotel entrance. Nothing. The only sound was the rustle of leaves and the soft hum of city lights. Still, the feeling didn't fade. Her pulse began to race again, faster this time. Then she saw it. A black car, parked across the street. The engine was running, headlights dim. The driver's face was hidden, but she could see the faint glow of a cigarette. Her heart sank. She turned quickly and walked the other way. Her heels clicked faster. The sound followed her. She turned a corner and pressed her back against a brick wall, pulling out her phone. No signal. Of course. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. She looked up at the buildings around her. Tall, glass, unwelcoming. She had survived worse nights, she reminded herself. Much worse. A gust of wind blew, carrying the faint sound of footsteps behind her. She spun around. No one was there. She exhaled slowly and whispered to herself, "You're imagining things. You're fine. You're lost." The voice came from the shadows. Deep, calm, familiar. Isla's stomach dropped. She stepped back, but her heel hit the curb. Her pulse thundered in her ears. From the darkness, Dominic stepped into view. No tie, no jacket now. Just that black shirt open at the collar. Tattoos peeking like whispers of sin. His eyes found hers instantly. "You really shouldn't walk alone in this part of town," he said softly. She forced a breath. "You followed me." He shrugged. "You left too fast. I didn't think we needed a second dance." He smiled slightly. "Maybe you're right. Maybe we don't." She looked away, arms folded across her chest. "What do you want, Dominic?" "Answers." Her throat went dry. "About what?" "About why you're here. About why you're breathing the same air as my brother again." Her heart skipped. "I didn't know he'd be here," she said. "You always say that," he murmured. "I haven't seen Mateo in years." Dominic's gaze softened, almost sad. "And yet he still owns every fear in your body." She flinched. "Don't talk like you know me." "I do." He stepped closer. Not fast, just steady, deliberate. She could smell his cologne again, feel the heat radiating off his skin. "I know what you look like when you're lying," he said quietly. "I know the way your eyes shift when you're scared. I know the sound your breath makes when you're trying to convince yourself you're free." She shook her head, voice trembling. "You don't know me anymore." He smiled again, but it wasn't cruel. It was worse, it was knowing. "That's where you're wrong." She took another step back. Her heel hit the curb again. "Dominic, I don't want trouble." "Then stop walking into it." Their eyes locked. The city felt silent. He leaned in close, voice low enough to almost be a whisper. "You should go home now, Isla, before someone else finds you." "What does that mean?" "Mateo isn't the only one watching." Her breath caught. She opened her mouth to speak, but he was already gone. Just gone. Like smoke dissolving into the night. She turned in circles, scanning the street, but he had vanished. Only the sound of the city remained. The cars, the faint hum of the wind, the pulse of her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. She stood there for a long time, not sure if she was more afraid of the man she once loved or the one she just danced with. Then, somewhere behind her, the black car engine started again. Across the street, Marco lowered his binoculars. "Boss," he whispered into the earpiece. "She's moving. Looks scared." Dominic's voice came through, smooth and calm. "Good. Fear keeps her alive." "You really think she doesn't know it was you?" Marco asked. Dominic's silence was long. Then he said quietly, "She knows." "What do you want me to do?" "Follow her. Keep your distance. Make sure she gets home safe. And if someone else gets to her first?" Dominic's eyes flicked toward the night skyline, the faint reflection of his own face in the car window. "Then they'll have to deal with me." He hung up. The cigarette in Marco's hand burned low, the ash glowing faint red against the dark. He muttered under his breath, "Not a stranger at all." And then the car slipped quietly into the night, following the woman who didn't yet know she had just stepped back into the world she fought so hard to escape. The elevator door slid open with a soft ding. Isla stepped inside and pressed the button for the 7th floor. She kept glancing over her shoulder as if shadows could follow her through walls. When the doors closed, she finally exhaled. But it didn't help. That feeling still clung to her skin, cold and sharp, like fingers brushing the back of her neck. The kind of fear that didn't come from what you saw. Came from what you thought you saw. Mateo, at the bar, watching her with that same twisted grin. He wore the night he broke her phone and told her no one else would ever love her. She had seen him. She was sure of it. The elevator doors opened again. The hallway was dark and quiet. Her apartment was at the far end. She walked quickly, her heels silent now, her keys ready in hand. She reached her door, turned the lock, stepped inside, and slammed it shut behind her. Click. Lock. She leaned her back against the door. Silence. Her apartment was small but clean. White walls, soft lighting, a worn couch, a plant she always forgot to water. The kind of space built by someone trying very hard to feel normal. She dropped her purse and slipped off her heels. But something didn't feel right. She crossed to the window and peeked through the blinds. No car, no movement, just the glow of the streetlight and a flicker of wind. Still, her skin itched. She turned away and walked into the bathroom. The lights above the mirror buzzed softly as they flickered on. Her makeup was smudged. Her lipstick faded. Her eyes were wide and tired. She stared at her reflection for a long time. Then she whispered, "He's back." But which he? Matteo? Dominic? She couldn't tell which one haunted her more. An hour earlier, the man at the bar swirled the amber liquid in his glass and gave the room another lazy glance. He'd seen her come in, seen her walk across the floor like a woman on a mission, seen her take the stranger's hand and spin under the light like a story waiting to be rewritten. He hadn't moved, not once. And when Isla looked over at him, her eyes wide, her body stiff, he held her gaze just long enough. Just enough to make her believe what he wanted her to believe. Back in her apartment, Isla curled up on the couch with a blanket pulled tight around her. She hadn't turned on the TV. The silence helped her think. What if it wasn't Matteo? Her brows furrowed. She stood up, walked to her bookshelf, and pulled out the old photo album hidden behind the novels. She hadn't opened it in years. She flipped to the first page. There they were, her and Matteo. Fake smiles, expensive clothes, parties filled with people who smelled like money and lies. And beside them, Dominic, the younger brother, the quieter one, always dressed in black, always watching. She remembered his eyes the night she left. Not angry, not sad, just knowing. She stared at his photo now, then at the memory of the man she danced with. Same chain, same tattoos, and that voice. It was Dominic. He didn't just find her. He planned it. The dance wasn't a coincidence. It was bait. She pressed her palm to her forehead and squeezed her eyes shut. A knock at the door made her freeze. Her hand dropped. Another knock, softer this time. Then a voice, calm, deep, almost polite. Isla. Her blood turned to ice. She didn't answer. The voice came again. Open the door. She took one silent step backward. I just want to talk. Another step. I'm not here to hurt you. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. That's what he used to say. A pause. Then, I'm not him. She crept toward the door and peeked through the peephole. It was him. Dominic. No guards. No weapons. Just him in the hallway. Sleeves rolled. Eyes dark and calm as night. She didn't know what made her do it. But her fingers moved. She unlocked the door and opened it 2 inches. Not more. Why are you here? She asked. I think you already know. She narrowed her eyes. Matteo saw us. At the gala. Dominic blinked once, then smiled. Just barely. The man at the bar, he said. Her stomach dropped. Yes. That wasn't Matteo. She stared. What? Dominic stepped forward. She stepped back. He pushed the door open and entered slowly. I put him there, he said, to see how you'd react. Isla couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. You're lying, she whispered. Am I? Why would you do that? To confirm something. She backed into the wall, fingers curling into fists. That's sick. No, that's smart, he replied. Matteo wants you found. Alive. For now. I needed to see if you were still afraid of him. Her throat burned. I'm not afraid of anyone. You ran. Her chest rose fast. That was 5 years ago. You ran, he said again, slower this time. I let you go. He stepped closer. This time, he said, voice low and certain, I need answers. Her back hit the wall. He didn't touch her, but the space between them disappeared. She could feel the heat of his body, see the pulse in his throat, smell the danger. Where's the rest of it? He asked. The rest of what? You know what? Her voice shook. If this is about Matteo, I'm not involved. Dominic stared at her like she was a puzzle with missing pieces. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. You think this is about him? Her silence was her answer. He leaned closer. I'm not Matteo's messenger. Then what are you? His lips twitched. A man cleaning up what he left behind. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means there's a storm coming. And I'm the umbrella? She snapped. He laughed once. A short, dangerous sound. No, you're the lightning. She turned away, but he grabbed her wrist. Not hard, just enough. She stopped. You're still angry, he said. I'm still surviving. You think I hurt you? No, I think you let it happen. That hit him. She saw it. His hand dropped, and for a second he looked human. Not a boss, not a monster, just a man who once stood in the doorway and watched her disappear. I didn't have the power then, he said. But I do now. She crossed her arms. Good for you. I'm not asking for congratulations. Then what do you want? He walked to the window, pulled back the curtain, and looked outside. Matteo's been using you. For years. Even after you left. That's impossible. He funneled money under your name. Hid accounts behind your ID. Your fingerprints are still on Moretti systems you thought were wiped. Her heart slammed in her chest. No, she whispered. He turned. Yes. Her knees buckled. She sat on the couch, hands trembling. Dominic watched her for a moment, then knelt down in front of her. I don't need you to trust me, he said. I need you to listen. I don't trust anyone. Good. That means you're finally ready. Ready for what? He leaned in close. To burn it all down. The words hung in the air like smoke. Burn it all down. Isla stared at him, heart pounding like a warning bell inside her chest. Dominic's eyes were steady, calm, but there was something burning behind them, something old and sharp. He wasn't asking. He wasn't threatening. He was telling her. And that was somehow worse. She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. Why me? He stood slowly. Because you know how Matteo thinks. She shook her head. No. I knew who he pretended to be, not the monster he became. Dominic stepped away from her, walking toward the window. City lights glittered outside like fallen stars. His voice was quiet when he finally spoke. My brother is gone. Isla blinked. What do you mean, gone? Disappeared. 3 weeks ago. No contact. No sightings. Nothing. She sat up straighter. And you think I had something to do with that? I think he had a plan. And I think you were part of it. Whether you knew it or not. Isla stood, suddenly angry. You think I'm helping him? Dominic turned around. His tone stayed soft, but his eyes sharpened. I think you were his favorite game, and I think he's still playing. Her fists clenched. I've been hiding from him for 5 years. Then help me stop him, Dominic said. Before he stops you. The words sliced through her like ice. Her mouth opened, then closed. There was nothing left to say. 30 minutes later, they were inside Dominic's private penthouse. High above the city. Too high for comfort. The elevator opened directly into the living room. A space so wide and quiet it felt like a dream that hadn't decided whether to be good or bad yet. Black floors. Glass walls. Gold details. Everything smelled expensive and silent. Isla stepped inside slowly, her heels clicking against the cold marble. "I'm not your prisoner," she said quietly. "No," Dominic answered. "If you were, you wouldn't be conscious." She turned, eyes narrowing. "Was that a joke?" He looked at her. "Do I look like a man who jokes?" He didn't, but something in her chest still fluttered, and she hated that it did. He walked past her, tossing his keys on a sleek black counter. "Sit," he said. "I'd rather stand." "Suit yourself." He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder, dropped it on the table with a thud that made her flinch. He opened it slowly, flipping through photos. "I'm going to tell you everything I know, and then you're going to tell me everything you're still lying about." "I'm not lying," she snapped. He didn't even look up. Yet. The first photo was of Matteo, smiling, suited, sitting next to a man Isla didn't recognize, older, heavier, covered in gold rings. "This," Dominic said, tapping the second man's face, "is Guillermo Vega, one of the higher-ups in the Valencia cartel." She frowned. "I thought the Moretas didn't deal with them." "We didn't. Matteo did." Her stomach twisted. Dominic continued. "Matteo's last known meeting was with Vega. 3 days later, $8 million disappeared from our offshore accounts." Her breath caught. $8 million? Yes. And you think I have it?" Dominic finally looked up. His gaze pierced straight through her. "I think my brother would rather lose his empire than let me find it. I think he hid it somewhere no one would look." Her voice cracked. "And you think that's me?" Dominic leaned forward, voice low. "I think he built entire safes under your name, Isla. I think he used you as a smokescreen for years. And I think the moment he realized I was getting close, he disappeared. He's not dead. He's planning something." She shook her head, pacing. "This is insane. Maybe. I don't know anything about stolen millions or cartels. Maybe not directly, but you know him. You know his habits, his patterns. You were his favorite shadow. That has value." She stopped walking. "Why are you telling me all this?" "Because you're not safe anymore." Her arms wrapped around herself. "I've never been safe." Dominic stepped closer. Not too close, but enough. "I can protect you," he said, "but I need your help." She looked up at him, eyes full of fear and fire. "What kind of help?" "Help me find him." Isla stared. "Help him find Matteo? The man who once pressed a ring onto her finger and whispered promises that turned to poison?" She shook her head again. "I can't." "You can." "I won't." "Then you'll die." The words were so soft they almost sounded kind. She stared at him. Her mouth moved before her mind caught up. "What's the deal?" Dominic didn't blink. "You help me find Matteo. Help me track the money. Help me figure out what he's planning. In return, I'll make sure no one touches you. Not the cartel. Not my men. Not anyone. And if I say no, you won't." He walked past her into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water. She followed him with her eyes. "You always so sure of yourself?" "Only when I'm right." She sat down at the edge of a velvet chair, her knees shaking beneath the surface. Dominic came back and placed the glass on the table beside her. His tone softened just slightly. "You don't have to trust me, Isla. I wouldn't trust me either." She looked up, startled by the honesty. "But you don't have any other options." She thought about that, and he was right. She didn't. The clock ticked. The city buzzed outside like a sleeping beast. And Isla finally whispered, "I'll help you." Dominic's head turned. Slowly. "Say it again." She met his eyes. "I'll help you." He studied her face for a long time. Then, almost gently, he said, "Good. Hours later, Isla lay on the guest bed in his penthouse, wide awake. She couldn't sleep, not with her past breathing down her neck, not with her future sitting 2 doors away, reading files about how Mateo once bought her favorite necklace with blood money. She stared at the ceiling. Dominic wasn't who she remembered. He was colder now, sharper, but not cruel. Not yet. She didn't trust him, but she needed him, and that was the most dangerous part of all. In the other room, Dominic stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. She agreed, he said quietly. Marco's voice crackled through the line. You think she knows more than she's saying? She always does. And if she tries to run? Dominic's eyes narrowed as he stared into the night. She won't. You sure? She knows what's out there. A pause. And Marco? Yeah. Keep eyes on the apartment. I don't care how invisible you have to be. If she steps out of line. Marco waited. Dominic's voice dropped to a whisper. End it. He hung up. And then he stood alone, watching the city, as the ghost of his brother crept back into the shadows. Isla didn't sleep. She just lay there, eyes open, heart hollow. 100 memories whispered around her like ghosts. She didn't fight them. There was no point. They always found her anyway, no matter how far she ran, no matter how deep she buried the past. And tonight they came in full, not like nightmares, but like facts, because facts couldn't be escaped, not even by someone like her. 5 years ago, she was wearing red that night, a deep red dress, sharp heels, lips painted to match. Mateo had liked her in red, said it made her look expensive. She stood beside him in a private suite while 3 men argued over how to move product across the border without raising suspicion. None of them looked at her, but she was the only one in the room worth watching, because Isla Hart wasn't just the girlfriend. She was the solution, and everyone in that circle knew it, even if they pretended not to. You're thinking too small, she'd said, folding her arms. And too fast. The room went quiet. One of the men, an older guy with heavy rings, frowned. Excuse me? You heard me, Isla said. You're rushing a route that hasn't been tested, and you're putting it through a warehouse we haven't secured. She looked at Mateo. Tell him. Mateo sipped his drink and smiled. She's right. He always let her speak. That was the game. He played the monster. She played the mind. They made a perfect team, or so she thought. That night she gave orders, drew routes, assigned shadows, and the plan went through. Efficient, clean, invisible, just like she had always been. The sun hadn't risen yet. Isla sat alone in Dominic's kitchen, wrapped in a robe too big for her. Coffee untouched, eyes distant. Dominic stood in the doorway, quiet. He'd been watching her for minutes before she finally said, You were right. He stepped into the room. About what? She looked up. I wasn't just Mateo's girl. He said nothing. I was his planner, his strategist, his fixer. She paused. His handler. Dominic's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I kept things clean, told him who to trust, who to cut loose, who to bury. Her voice dropped on the last word. Dominic pulled out a chair and sat across from her. I wasn't stupid, she said, but I was loyal, and loyalty makes you blind. Did you kill anyone? He asked, voice low. No, her answer was quick. But I made the decisions that got people killed. Knowingly, eventually. She ran a hand through her hair. There was this man, she whispered. Raymond. Quiet. Loyal. Worked shipping. I remember him, Dominic said. I told Mateo to fire him. I thought he was a leak. Was he? No. Dominic frowned. What happened to him? Isla's throat tightened. They found him in the river. Hands tied, teeth gone. A long silence passed between them. Then she whispered, "That wasn't the worst part." Dominic leaned forward slightly. "It was the week after that," she said. Matteo got paranoid. Said there was someone else close to him feeding info to the DEA. She looked at Dominic. And in that moment her eyes changed. The guilt in them could drown a man. "It was my brother," she said softly. "Eli." Dominic didn't move. "I didn't know. Not then. Not until after Matteo told me he'd handled it." The words stuck in her throat like glass. "He said Eli was a loose end. That's all he said." Dominic's voice was barely a whisper. "And what did you do?" "I ran." She looked down at her hands. "The next morning, I emptied my accounts, burned my phone. I didn't take anything except the dress on my back. I left while Matteo slept. I disappeared." Another silence. Then Dominic asked the question that had been waiting in the air since the first night he saw her again. "You loved him?" She shook her head slowly. "No." Her voice was small but clear. "I loved who he pretended to be." Dominic leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on her. "And what about me?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. Her lips parted, then closed. "You were different," she said finally. "But you still ran from me too." She looked away. "You didn't stop me." His voice was calm, but there was weight behind it. "I was young," he said, "and Matteo still controlled everything. I couldn't protect you then. And now." Dominic didn't smile, but his eyes turned cold. "Now I bury people who try to hurt you." A chill crept down her spine. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she whispered. "I don't make promises. I make warnings." He stood. She watched him move toward the window, the early light starting to stretch across the floor. "You think I'm a monster too," he said, staring at the city. "No," she replied. "You're a knife. You only cut when someone tells you to." He turned, surprised. "But now," she added, "you hold the blade." He nodded once. Then something softened in him. Barely, but it was there. "You didn't deserve what happened to your brother," he said. "I know. And you don't deserve what's coming next." She frowned. "What is coming?" Dominic's jaw flexed. "I got word this morning. Vega's men just crossed into New York." Her breath caught. "They're here," she whispered. He nodded. "They know Matteo's missing, and they think you might be the key to finding him." She stood. "I'm not." "I know." "Then why?" "Because it doesn't matter what's true. It only matters what they believe." Isla's heart pounded in her chest. "So what do we do?" she asked. Dominic turned, and in his eyes, she saw the man he had become. "We give them something to believe." That night, Isla stood in front of the mirror in a black dress, hair pinned, lips bare, a ghost version of herself. Beside her on the bed was a gun she didn't want to touch. Dominic walked in, buttoning his cuffs. "You ready?" "No." He smirked. "Good." They walked side by side to the elevator. Not lovers, not enemies, just two people walking back into the fire they once tried to escape. The car ride was silent. Dominic sat in the front seat beside Marco, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Isla sat in the back, wrapped in silence, her hands resting in her lap like folded knives. She was calm on the outside, but inside, a storm. The black dress felt tight across her chest. Every breath felt stolen. Her heart thudded like footsteps in a dark hallway. She looked out the window as the streets blurred by. The city was sleeping, but she could feel its eyes still open. She could feel someone watching, and maybe that someone had been watching for years. The warehouse was on the edge of the docks. A cold, broken skeleton of metal and silence. It had no name, no cameras, no witnesses, just rusted doors and too many dark corners. The kind of place where secrets came to die. Dominic stepped out of the car first. He didn't speak, just gave a quiet nod to the men waiting in the shadows. 6 of them, all armed, all trained, all his, or so he thought. Isla followed him in. Her heels tapped against the concrete floor, echoing like a countdown. Inside, it was darker than she expected. One flickering light above. Nothing else. Dominic turned to her. "This is where it ends," he said. She looked up at him. "Or begins." He gave her a slow, unreadable smile. "Depends who walks out." 10 minutes later, the deal was supposed to start. Dominic stood in the center of the room, arms crossed, watching the far door. Isla stayed behind him, her fingers grazing the edge of the small pistol hidden in her coat. She wasn't sure if she could shoot it, but she was sure she'd try. Marco walked over, quiet. No movement yet. Dominic's eyes didn't move. "They'll come. You think they'll really trade Matteo's location for her?" Dominic glanced at Isla. "They think she's leverage." Marco nodded. "And if it's a setup?" Dominic's jaw flexed. "Then we improvise." And then the door creaked. Slow, rusted, like a breath being held too long. 4 men walked in. Slick suits, shaved heads, cold eyes. One of them held a phone. He handed it to Dominic without a word. The screen lit up. Coordinates. A location. Dominic stared. But something wasn't right. Why hand over the location without asking for Isla first? He turned slowly. "This isn't real." The man smiled. "No," said a voice behind him. "But it's still true." Dominic froze. So did Isla. Because that voice, it was him. From the shadows behind the 4 men, another figure stepped out, dressed in black, hair slicked back, smile like poison dipped in honey. Matteo Moretti, alive, and standing 5 feet from the woman who thought he was just a memory. Isla couldn't breathe. The world slowed. Everything she thought she'd escaped was right in front of her. Flesh and bone. Matteo smiled at her like he'd just come home. "You look good," he said softly. "Little thinner, but still mine." Dominic moved fast, stepping between them. "You're not supposed to be here." Matteo laughed. "Neither are you. But look at us. 2 brothers. Same game, different rules." He circled slowly, like a lion inside a cage he built himself. "You really thought I wouldn't hear about the dance?" he asked. Dominic's eyes narrowed. "I have people everywhere," Matteo said. "Even inside your little clean empire." He turned to Isla. "That's how I knew you were back. How I knew you'd show up here, playing dress-up in the middle of a war." Isla's throat was dry. "What do you want?" "You," he said simply. She flinched. Dominic's voice cut through. "She's not yours." Matteo raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that, little brother?" And then, everything exploded. Guns raised. Shouts rang. One of Dominic's men turned suddenly, aiming at his own team. Another pulled a gun on Marco. Double agents. Planted by Matteo. "Don't move!" someone screamed. But it was too late. Shots fired. Screams. Chaos. Isla dropped to the floor as bullets whizzed over her head. Sparks flew from the metal walls. Someone crashed into a crate. Another hit the ground with a sharp, ugly thud. Dominic spun around, grabbed Isla by the arm. "Move!" They ran through the warehouse, ducking behind metal shelves and broken pallets. More shots. More shouting. Matteo's voice cut through it all like a knife. "You can't outrun me, Dominic." "She always runs back." Isla's heart was pounding so hard it drowned out the noise. They reached a side door. Dominic kicked it open and dragged her out into the alley behind the warehouse. Cold air hit her face like a slap. She stumbled, fell to her knees. He pulled her up. "You okay?" "No," she gasped. "But keep going." They ran. Sirens in the distance. Tires screeching. The city had woken up. And death had come with it. 20 minutes later, Dominic slammed the apartment door behind them. Both of them were breathless, covered in dust, shaking. Isla collapsed onto the couch. Her hands were bloody, not from a wound, but from scraping them on the concrete when she fell. Dominic paced the room like a caged animal. "They were inside," he muttered. "Two of my own." Turned. Isla looked at him. "You didn't see it?" "I should have." She stood, legs wobbling. He knew everything. The dance, the meeting, the trap, all of it. Dominic stopped, and in his eyes, for the first time, she saw fear. Real fear. "He doesn't want the money," he whispered. "He wants revenge." She frowned. "For what?" "For losing." He walked toward her. Slow, controlled. "When you left," Matteo unraveled. "He was never the same. I thought he just lost his grip." He shook his head. "No. He was planning." Isla touched his arm. "Dominic." He looked at her. "He's going to come for us," she said. Dominic didn't blink. "I know." Her voice cracked. "Then what do we do now?" He stepped closer, face inches from hers, and his voice was low, steady, deadly. "We stop playing defense." Her breath hitched. "And we draw him out." Sirens wailed in the distance. The night air was sharp, thick with gunpowder and smoke. Shadows danced across the alley walls like ghosts. Dominic stumbled as they turned the corner. Isla caught him just before he hit the ground. Hey, stay with me." Blood soaked his shirt. The left side, near the shoulder. His breathing was fast. Too fast. His face was pale. Isla pressed her hand against the wound. He winced. "Car's close," he managed to say. She didn't wait. With one arm wrapped tight around his waist, she dragged him forward. His boots scraped against the pavement. Every step left a trail of blood behind them. They reached the car. The keys were already inside. She shoved the door open, pushed Dominic into the passenger seat, and ran around to the driver's side. Her hands were shaking. The car roared to life. She hit the gas like she meant it. Tires screamed. The city blurred. And behind them, the warehouse burned in silence. 30 minutes later, they reached the safe house. A crooked old place tucked behind a row of forgotten factories. Faded paint. Broken porch. No lights. Just quiet. She helped him inside. He collapsed onto the couch, groaning. "Don't pass out," she said, kneeling beside him. He gave her a ghost of a smile. "You bossing me now? You're bleeding on my shoes. Then take them off." She almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she tore the jacket from his body and pulled his shirt aside. The wound was ugly. Clean shot through the shoulder. No exit. "You need a hospital," she said. "No hospitals," he murmured. "You'll die. Then do something fast." She looked around the room, found an old first aid kit under the sink, a towel, a bottle of vodka, thread and needle that looked older than the house itself. "This is gonna hurt," she warned. "I've been shot. Everything already hurts." She poured the vodka on the wound. He jerked, teeth clenched, a low growl crawling from his throat. "God, I hate you," he muttered. "Good. Stay mad. That means you're awake." She threaded the needle and began to sew. Took 20 minutes. He barely flinched. When she tied the last knot, She sat back on her heels, covered in sweat and blood, hands shaking harder than before. He looked at her, but this time it wasn't with pain. It was something else, something deeper. "You okay?" he asked softly. Her lips trembled. "You're the one with a bullet in you." "That's not what I meant." Her voice broke. "No." And then the flood came. Tears poured down her cheeks. Not quiet ones. Not pretty ones. Real ones. The kind that sounded like everything she'd been holding in for 5 long years was finally breaking loose. "I'm tired," she cried. "I'm so tired of running. Every night I think he's behind me. Every time I eat in a restaurant I check the exits. I haven't slept through a full night since I left." She pressed her hands against her eyes, as if that would stop it. "I thought I could disappear. I thought I could be someone else. But he still found me. He always finds me." Dominic didn't speak. He didn't try to quiet her. He just watched, like he'd been waiting for this. When she finally looked up at him, mascara smeared, eyes red, she whispered, "Why did you help me?" He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, he said, "Because I wanted to." She shook her head. "That's not a reason." He leaned forward slowly, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. And he said something she never expected. "I always wondered," he said, "what would have happened if I met you first?" She froze. "What?" He looked into her eyes. "If I'd seen you before Mateo did. If I'd walked into that party first. Would you have danced with me?" Isla's breath caught. "I don't know." He smiled, slow and sad. "I do." He reached up, gently, and touched her face. His fingers were warm, careful, like he was afraid she'd disappear. "You don't belong to him," he said softly. "You never did." Her eyes welled again, but this time the tears didn't fall, because something had shifted. For the first time in years, she didn't feel hunted. She didn't feel small. She felt seen, and it terrified her. Hours passed. The safe house was still. Dominic slept, or tried to. Isla sat at the window watching the street, pistol in her lap. Every now and then, she'd look back at him, and she'd remember his words. "You don't belong to him." It echoed louder than any gunshot, and she believed it, almost. Back in the warehouse ruins, Mateo stood in the smoke. His men cleared bodies. His phone buzzed once. A text. "They escaped. He's wounded." He smiled. "Good," he said to no one. Then he looked up at the stars, whispered, "Let him bleed." The sunrise was cold. Isla stood on the rooftop of the safe house, wind tugging her hair, face lifted to the sky. She hadn't slept. Not even a minute. Not after everything. The air smelled like change, like rain and smoke and something just beginning to crack open. Inside, Dominic was still resting. The stitches she'd done were holding. The bleeding had stopped, but the war had only just started. She lit a cigarette, didn't smoke it, just held it between her fingers and watched it burn. She didn't know who she was anymore. Not the girl who danced to make a man jealous. Not the woman who ran. Not the one who cried in silence. No, she was something else now. Something Mateo was about to meet again. By the time Dominic woke, she was dressed. Black blazer, high ponytail, leather gloves, eyes like steel. She looked like vengeance in heels. Dominic blinked up at her from the couch. "You planning a funeral?" She picked up a USB stick and slipped it into her coat. "No, just a reckoning." He sat up slowly, wincing. "You're going after him alone?" "No," she said, walking to the door. "You're coming with me." He raised an eyebrow. "You always this bossy after a good cry?" She paused, then smiled without humor. "That wasn't a cry. That was an awakening." 1 hour later, they stood outside the Skyglass penthouse, a place only 5 people in the city had access to. Mateo was one of them. A high-rise, luxury fortress. No cameras. No neighbors. Just marble floors, mirrored walls, and a view of the city that made death feel glamorous. Isla stared at the door. "Security?" Dominic asked. She held up a small silver chip. Still had one of his old biometrics. He never changed the locks. Dominic whistled. "That's sloppy." "No," she said, eyes dark. "That's arrogance." The door opened. They stepped inside. Silence. Luxury. Danger. Dominic's gun was already drawn. Isla held hers low, hidden by her coat. They moved room by room. Nothing. Until a beep. Her phone. The signal had connected. The hidden mic was live. And the live stream had started. Dominic glanced over. "You sure this'll work?" She nodded once. "I know what Mateo's weakness is." He waited. "What is it?" She looked him straight in the eye. "Himself." It took 20 minutes for Mateo to arrive. He walked in like he owned the world. Sunglasses. Black gloves. Smile like a weapon. He stopped when he saw them. Well, he said. "I always said the two of you would end up together." Dominic didn't move. Isla stepped forward. "You're late." Mateo laughed. "You're not in charge, darling." "Not yet," she said. He walked slowly toward the minibar, poured himself a drink, and turned around. "Here's how this ends," he said. "You hand over the money, the files, the footage, and I let you live." Dominic's voice was cold. "That's not why we brought you here." "No?" Mateo sipped. "Then why?" Isla pulled out her phone, tapped once. On the wall behind her, the smart mirror lit up. A screen appeared. Mateo's face on every inch of glass. "Recognize yourself?" she asked. He narrowed his eyes. "You're live," she said softly. "Cartel Command is watching. So is everyone you ever lied to." The color drained from his face. "You didn't," he whispered. She stepped closer. "I did." He lunged for her. But Dominic was faster. Gun out. Safety off. "Don't," he growled. Mateo froze. The screen kept rolling. Old videos. Voicemails. Audio clips. Mateo's own voice. Confessing to Eli's murder. Explaining how he used Isla. How he lied. Manipulated. Planted agents inside the cartel. The room was ice. Mateo turned pale. "I can fix this," he whispered. "I can." "You can't fix dead," Isla said. The elevator dinged. Footsteps. Heavy. Fast. Dominic stepped aside. Isla didn't. She stood in front of Mateo. Calm. Centered. "I could shoot you," she said. He looked at her. "And I wouldn't even blink." She raised the gun, but didn't pull the trigger. Because behind Mateo the door opened, and 3 men stepped in. Not hers. Not Dominic's. Cartel. Big. Silent. Armed. Mateo turned just in time to see them enter. "No," he breathed. "No, wait." But Isla was already walking away. She didn't look back. Not when he begged. Not when they grabbed him. Not when he screamed. Dominic followed her out. As the door closed behind them, they heard the sound of justice. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, final, and done. Back in the elevator, Isla leaned against the wall. Dominic looked at her. "You okay?" She exhaled slowly. "Ask me tomorrow." He nodded. The elevator hummed. Soft. Peaceful. For the first time in a long time, they were rising instead of falling. And when the doors opened, so did the rest of their lives. 3 weeks later, the city was still. The chaos had melted away like ice left in the sun. The cartel never came back. Mateo was never seen again. And the war that started with one dance was now nothing more than a whisper. Isla stood by the window of the suite watching the skyline. The sky was clear. No sirens. No shadows moving across rooftops. Just light and silence. She touched the glass with her fingertips. Not because she was afraid, but because she wasn't. For the first time in 5 years, she wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't waiting for the knock that would end everything. Dominic's empire had shifted. The men who betrayed him were gone. The loyalty was clean now. The money was cleaner. And the man in charge? He'd changed too. Isla now worked beside him, not behind him. She wasn't just a strategist. She was his voice in rooms where no woman had ever spoken. His equal in plans no one else could touch. His second shadow. His first thought. They didn't talk about love. They didn't have to. It showed in the quiet glances, the silent laughter, the way he always poured her wine before pouring his own. It showed in the way she stopped flinching at loud noises, in the way she started sleeping through the night, and in the way her heels now echoed in every hallway like a heartbeat, not a warning. That night they returned to the same ballroom, same chandeliers, same golden glow, same orchestra sweeping through something romantic and slow. Another charity gala. Another evening of forced smiles and quiet power games. Dominic wore black. No tie. Gold watch. Scar on his shoulder peeking out beneath the collar. Isla wore cream. Long sleeves. Hair tucked back. Simple but strong. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. They entered the room together. And this time everyone noticed. Not because they were loud, but because power walks quietly when it knows it can. Halfway through the night, Dominic leaned closer. "Do you remember the last time we were here?" Isla gave a sly smile. "I remember a dance I didn't finish. You walked away," he said. "You let me. I didn't want to scare you. You did." He paused, and then gently he held out his hand. "No one's watching." She looked around. It was true. The people in the room were too busy drinking, laughing, trying to be interesting. No one cared about the couple standing in the center of the floor. For once, there was no trap in the shadows. No ex watching from the bar. No plan. Just music. And a man offering her peace in the form of a dance. She took his hand, smiling, and whispered, "Then let's dance for real this time." Their hands clasped, not like the first time, not like strangers pretending. This was different. His touch was gentle, not possessive. Her fingers laced into his like they were always meant to be there. They didn't speak as they moved. They didn't have to. The music carried them across the floor like they'd rehearsed it 1,000 times in dreams. Dominic didn't lead. She did. He let her. And in that moment Isla Hart, once a shadow, once a weapon, once a woman on the run, became something else entirely. Not someone who survived, but someone who stayed. As the last note played, and the room applauded a performance they hadn't even noticed, Dominic leaned in close. He didn't say, "I love you." He didn't have to. And Isla, she didn't smile for show. She smiled because she finally could. Then she pulled him in tighter, pressed her lips to his cheek, and whispered the only truth that mattered. "I'm not afraid anymore." He looked at her, proud, relieved, quietly shaken, and she kissed him. Slow, real, soft enough to shatter steel. Their hands stayed together long after the music stopped. And this time, she was the one who led.
Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, I promise you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more thrilling as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.